Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Are you ready for degrowth communism? Because The Atlantic says that Americans are ready for it. Though to hedge themselves a little bit, they also add that the plan dreamed up by a Japanese philosopher named Kohei Sato to save the planet from climate change is economically dubious and politically impossible. But The Atlantic still insists that it's very popular. But if it's so popular, how come I'm just now hearing about this, as I'm sure many of you are? I bet if you even ask your lefty friends, family members, or neighbors, they'd be just as confused about what any of this is. So it seems to me The Atlantic is trying to popularize it in order to create the momentum that would be necessary to overcome the self-admitted, economically dubious, and politically impossible nature of degrowth communism. Joining us now to discuss what that even means is Mark Morano, the founder of ClimateDepot.com. Mark, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Kara. Happy to be here.
Great. So what in the world is degrowth communism? It sounds kind of redundant.
Well, what it is, this is a Japanese philosopher named Kohei Sato, and he's come up with this idea. Degrowth has been around for decades, and the degrowth movement basically is another form of socialism, communism, central planning, an earlier version of the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it. But the degrowth movement holds that human prosperity, wealth creation, and countries with GDPs that grow is bad for the earth, bad for the environment. So therefore, we need government policies that will throttle growth. And that's why it's called the degrowth movement. And what this Japanese philosopher Sato has done is he's combined that with communism to degrowth communism. As The Atlantic explains, degrowth alone means say goodbye to hamburgers, SUVs, annual cross-country flights. And by the way, we're there. Net zero agenda is literally every aspect of that, the intentional collapse and ration of energy, food, and transportation. And so what they've done, the key to this Atlantic where they try to be mealy-mouthed and get around this isn't top-down Leninist communism they're talking about. This is more the fuzzy, warm worker co-op version of communism. In academic circles, in corporate media, in this little bubble of the ruling class governing elite, Kara, there's still this idea that, well, the Soviet Union, the Eastern countries, North Korea, Cuba, that really wasn't communism. That was something else. Communism's never really been tried. And that's the sort of communism they're talking about, is this communism that doesn't actually exist, because every time it's tried, it turns into some form of totalitarianism. And they're combining that with this evil degrowth situation. So The Atlantic is now saying the quiet part out loud.
You know, and it's interesting as you bring that up, because you're right. That's exactly why the left always says, even though you can point to 1,000 examples of communism having been tried, they always say it hasn't really been tried. But the whole problem with Marxism is that it falls flat on its face when it runs headlong into reality, because in order for them to get from where we are now to this workers' paradise, this co-op where it's from each according to his, his ability to labor, to each according to his need, that in order to get to that spot, someone or something, meaning the government, the state, it's going to have to be really massive. It's going to have to be massive. It's going to have to have a lot of central planning to take from everybody and then divvy up fairly. And we're supposed to just trust them that people who have all of our money, wealth, and power, that they're going to re-give it back to us, but in a very nice, fair, and equitable manner. And then once we all have our needs, that they will then dissolve themselves and they'll become like us, comrades, not the first among equals like our kings, but they're going to be comrades like the rest of us, working out in the fields and, giving that labor, the fruits of that labor to others. Obviously, that's never going to happen. That, like I said, reality will smack you in the face every single time. So they like to do that quite often. And as you're talking about the degrowth policies and the idea, even in the article, saying that you can't set your thermometer too cold in the summer or too hot in the winter, and all the rest, where it gets down to the nitty-gritty details. It's interesting that the article tries to say, well, he gets some flack even from many groups on the left, and they go through different types of left-wingers who say, well, degrowth isn't so great, and they try and cast doubt on what he's saying. But do you think the reason why they're doing that is because what Kohei Sato is saying is actually just a logical conclusion of, like you said, all their policies? He's just being open about it, and they're not.